In this video, I'll create this app. It's a quite simple Django and Django Channels application that uses Chart.js to create and update this graph. Values that are used by the Chart.js library are generated by Django, and then they are sent via the WebSocket protocol to this page. This time, it's the asynchronous code that can handle several clients. If I open the second tab and make a request to the page, I'll get the same result. So, let's do it. Firstly, I want to repeat my last Django Channels synchronous app, and then I want to modify it to an asynchronous application, and after that I will add to it the Chart.js library. First of all, I have to create a basic Django project with one app and one template. I have to install Django. Now I want to create a Django project. Let's say it will be real-time graph project. Then I want to create an app. Let's say it'll be the graph app. Also, let's apply migrations. And let's start the Django's development server. Okay. And now on the level of the manage py file, I want to create two folders, the templates folder and the static folder. Templates for HTML templates and static folder to store JavaScript files. So let's create in the static folder the main.js file, and in the templates folder I want to create, let's say, the base HTML file. Also, I want to use here Bootstrap library, Bootstrap CSS. Just copy the link from the getbootstrap.com website here. I want to use the standard Bootstrap layout here, so I need the container block with the child row, with the child div with 10 Bootstrap columns width. I want to have it centered and a margin from top at 5. Okay, then in the main.js let's console log something. Django doesn't know about the templates and the static folders yet, so in the settings py file I have to append its installed apps with a graph app, and then the there's list I want to append with a new path. Join path method and gets the templates name of the folder as an argument. And then somewhere at the bottom I'm creating a new global variable, static files there's. It's a list that gets almost the same element, a new path to the static folder. Now, in the base HTML file, I want to load the static filter. Load static. And somewhere at the bottom, but before the closing body tag, I want to paste here a link to the script, to the main.js file. src attribute will get the following value: static and the main.js as an argument. Okay, then in the root urls.py file I want to create a new URL pattern. First of all, I want to import the include function, and my new URL pattern will be the following. It will include URL patterns from my graph app and its urls.py file. Now I have to create urls.py file in the graph folder. From Django urls, I'm importing the path function, and I want to create the URL patterns list, and the handler of all requests to the root URL address will be the index function that I want to import. From views module, import index. Let's create the index view. I am opening the views.py file, and here I am creating the index view that gets the request object as an argument. I want to render my base HTML template. Just base HTML, and the context dictionary will have the text key and some value. Let's test it. Let's restart the server. I got an exception. Let's check my URLs. URL patterns. A typo. Okay. I've got an empty page because I forgot to use my text variable. Let's say it'll be h1 header with the app ID. And here I want to use my text variable, the key of the context dictionary. And let's open the inspector, the console tab, and we can see the hello world from our main.js file. Okay, it's working. Nothing special. The next step is to install the Django channels and integrate it to the project. Let's install it. Now I have to append the installed apps list with the channels. Then let's open the asgi.py file, and I have to modify a bit the definition of the application variable. I have to import the protocol type router from channels routing protocol type router class that will check the type of the connection. The application variable will be an instance of the protocol type router that gets a dictionary as an argument, HTTP key, and the HTTP key will get as the value the results of the getAsgi application function. Okay, and then again in the settings.py file I have to duplicate this line, and then I change visgi to asgi, real-time graph. The application variable is defined in the asgi.py file, so I have to use here the asgi instead of the visgi. Save. Let's restart the development server. And we can see that the asgi development server is started. Okay, then I have to define a WebSocket, a router, and a handler like we usually do with the core Django apps. Let's start with the router. We can define in any file we want, but the preferred way is to create a special routing.py file. So I want to create in the graph folder a new file, routing.py. And the idea is absolutely the same like for core urls.py files. I need to import the path function. And then I'm creating the WS WebSocket URL patterns list. And it will have only one pattern, WS WebSocket graph, for example, trailing slash. Don't forget the trailing slashes for Django URLs. And the handler. In Django core, such handlers are called views, but in Django channels they are called consumers. So let's say that the handler will be graph consumer. That I have to import from consumers file that I will create a bit later. Import graph consumer. So let's create the consumers module, and I have to import the WebSocket class from channels generic WebSocket import WebSocket consumer, and my graph consumer will be a subclass of the WebSocket consumer. Pass for a while, and now I have to use these URL patterns. I just copied this name, and I need the asgi.py file again, and here I have to create a new key for the dictionary that gets the protocol type router class. WebSocket key, and it will be an instance of the auth middleware stack class that I have to import. As an argument, the auth middleware stack class gets an instance of the URL router class that I have to import. URL router from the channels routing model, and in its turn the URL router class gets our WS URL patterns list that I have to import too. From graph package, graph folder, from the routing module, I am importing WS URL patterns list. First of all, Django Channels checks the type of the connection. It checks the protocol type, whether it is an HTTP connection or a WebSocket connection. If the connection is the WebSocket connection, it will be given to the auth middleware stack to identify a user. I don't use users here, so it will be an anonymous, lazy user object. It's almost the same like Django does with its own auth model. After that, the connection will be given to the URL router class that passes it to the consumer that was defined in the WS URL patterns list. Let's back to our graph consumer. In the consumers model, and here I have to override the only one method. It will be the connect method. This method will define what have to happen when the Django channels will get the incoming connection. And here I want to accept the incoming connection from the client, from the browser. So I just call in the accept method. The connection is accepted and established, so I want to start messaging to the connection. I want to randomly generate integers and then send them in a JSON object. So let's import the JSON library, randint function from the random module, and from the time module I want to import the sleep function. And here I want to start a for loop for I in range 1000, and then I'm creating a dictionary with the value key, and the value of this key will be a result of the randint function that will generate integers from -20 to +20. Then I want to serialize this dictionary to the JSON object, JSON dump as dump string, and this JSON object I want to send to the other end of the connection. And I want to sleep 1 second. Now I need the client. So let's close it. Okay, and in the main.js file, I want to define an instance of the Websocket class. And then I have to pass into the Websocket constructor a URL address to send request to. And the URL address should be the same as the one that I defined in the WS URL patterns list. So the URL address will be WS Websocket localhost 8000 WS graph and trailing slash. Right like here. Then I have to define the onMessage methods. Socket variable onMessage, it's a function that gets an event from the browser. I want to get the Django data. Django sends JSON objects, so JSON parse E, and I need its data attribute. Let's print it. And now let's get the h1 header by its ID and change its text. So document query selector app ID inner text property gets a new value Django data, and I need its value attribute, because here I used the value. Let's test it. Let's restart the server. Unexpected response code 500. It means that something wrong with our Django consumer maybe, or router. The consumer looks fine. Let's look at routing py file, and I forgot to call the asgi method. Now it should work. Okay, and it's working. And now if I open the second tab and make a request to the page, I don't get the page. So I have to modify my code to get the asynchronous behavior. To get the asynchronous behavior, I have to get a new instance of my graph consumer class for each new client. And I can achieve it by using channel layers. Channel layer is an ordered first in, first out data structure. It's a queue of messages that this data structure receives from its clients, from the producers. And for every message on the channel in this queue, in this data structure, Django will call the assigned consumer. In my case, for each message in the channel, Django will call the graph consumer class. So, to use the channel layer, I have to use Redis, the in-memory database. You have to install it. Look at the website, Redis.io. There is the download section, and for Ubuntu-based Linux distributions, they have PPA, and they have also something for Mac, and I don't sure about the Windows, but I know that somehow the Redis can be installed on Windows machine. So you need to have the Redis installed. And now let's install Channels Redis package. Channels Redis. Okay, now I want to start the Redis server. We can see that it uses 6379 port number. The next step is to define the channel layer variable in the settings py file. So let's open it, and I want to define it here below the databases because they are similar. Channel layers. It's a dictionary. And we can specify here many layers, like we can use several databases, but the default layer will be enough. So default in lowercase. It is also a dictionary that has the backend key, and here channel Redis core Redis channel layer, and then the config of the Redis server. It's a dictionary too, with the hosts key in lowercase. It's a list of hosts. I'm using localhost 127.0.0.1 as a string, and then I'm specifying the port number 6379, this one, and that's all. Then in the consumer's py file I have to import the async WebSocket consumer. Async. And so the graph consumer is a subclass of the async WebSocket consumer. The body of the connect method will be almost the same, but the connect method should be a coroutine. I have to use the async keyword, and to call any functions from the coroutine I have to use the await keyword. Await here and await here, because here I'm calling the accept method and here I'm calling the send method. And then the sleep function I want to change to the sleep function from the async IO module, and that's all. Await here too, and it should work. Let's test it. Server error. Maybe I should restart the server. Okay, it works. And just restart my Django development server. It's working. Let's open a new tab. And it's working too. Another one. Okay. It's fully asynchronous app. Now let's add Chart.js library to the project. Let's open Chart.js org website. Let's get started. And I want to use this object, this definition of object. But first of all, I need to include the Chart.js to base HTML file. So I want to use cdn.js website, and I want to use a minified version. And somewhere here, script src attribute gets this value. Okay. Now let's copy the canvas tag here. I want to use height 200 pixels. Okay, and then I want to copy all this code, the definition of the chart object, and I want to paste it here, somewhere at the top. First of all, I want to take away the JavaScript object, this object, to a separate variable. Let's define it. For example, let's say it will be graph data variable, and copy this object here. Then I want to delete the content of the options object. Let's delete the border color. It's not necessary. Let's delete all the background color. If you want, you can leave this color. I want to use the blue one. And the opacity will be 50%. Let's say the labels will be months. And the type of the graph will be line. Then I want to use this dictionary, this object here. And now let's put the data that we received from Django to the Chart.js object. As you can probably guess, we need to manipulate the data list with this data. In the data object, in the dataset list. To get smooth transitions, firstly, I have to get this data list, all list. Then I have to read off the first element, and then I have to append the Django's data to the end of this list. After that, I have to assign the new list to the data attribute of the dictionary in the dataset. So, in my onMessage method, I'm creating a new variable. Let's say it'll be new graph data. And then I need to get the graph data object. Data dictionary. Then I have to get the dataset list, datasets. It's a list, and I need the first element, this dictionary. And I have to get the data list. Data. To get rid of the first element, I have to call the shift method. And to append to the new graph data list the data from Django, I am calling the push method and passing into it Django data its value attribute. And then I am assigning to this list a new value. New graph data list. And then I am calling my chart. My chart, it's an instance of the charts class. I'm calling the update methods. And I can delete this line. Let's test it. It's working. Let's open a new tab. It's working too. That's it. If you like the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.